Quick disclaimer, there are plenty of ways to 2JZ swap your 240SX. These are the parts that I deem essential if you want to make about 600 horsepower with your 2JZ, but there are plenty of cheaper alternatives out there. Thank you and enjoy the video. Alright, just so you guys know, all of the links to the parts will be listed in the description below in order as they appear in the video. So first up, the engine. I chose a 2JZ GTE VVTi out of an Aristo. Now for the transmission, there are a ton of different options here. I went with one of the more common ones, which is using an R154 transmission. There are two different types of this, the tripod style, which is pictured here, and you can see there's a tripod style shifter, or you can get the non-tripod style, earlier MK3 style transmission. Also, if your transmission doesn't come with a shift fork, you're gonna need to pick one up. This will be linked in the description as well. Now, if you get the earlier style non-tripod R154, you're gonna need to get your shifter housing extended. There are plenty of companies that do this. I went with Freed Engineering. They do a nice little shifter extension service, and you just ship in your housing, they extend it for you, and then you're good to go. Now, if you buy your 2JZ from a JDM warehouse, there's a high chance that it'll come with a JDM Hydrofan style water pump. This won't be able to be used on your application, so you're gonna need to get the USDM style water pump, which is pictured here. Now for any high horsepower application, you're gonna need an upgraded fuel pump. This is the Walbro 255 and should be at the low end of the spectrum in terms of the power you get for your fuel pump. It should only go up from here, so get the Walbro 450, get the 525, but yeah, you're gonna need an upgraded fuel pump. Cooling is very important, so make sure that you pick up a nice 3-core, at the very least, radiator for your 2J swap. This is the Mishimoto SR20 240SX radiator. That's what I used in mine. It seems to work really well, and I have no complaints so far about it. There are a ton of options for radiator fans. In the 240SX, there's not a ton of room, so you can't usually run the stock clutch type fan, so you're gonna need to run some E-fans. The company that I went with is called Flexolite. They make really high quality, low profile fans, but you can get Spall fans. I heard the OEM Nissan Altima fans work really well too, so there are a ton of options out there, but just know you'll be limited on room, so you're gonna wanna run something pretty thin. You're also going to need an upper radiator hose. A really nice plug and play option for this is the CX Racing upper radiator hose. It's a hard pipe, you're good to go essentially. So this will work with the SR20 type radiator for the 240SX, which has the inlet at the top on the left side of the car. So just know that there are a ton of options for this as well, but this is a really nice plug and play option. Now let's talk about mounts. You're going to need engine and transmission mounts. Pictured here are the excessive engine mounts, which just pop right into the 240. You're also gonna need engine brackets. These are also excessive made. They pop right in, no complaints, super sturdy stuff, would highly recommend. This is the excessive R154 transmission bracket that goes under the car and holds the transmission up. And with that, you're also going to need the transmission mount, which actually attaches to the transmission, which is also excessive made. You're obviously gonna need an intercooler. So this is the CX Racing all-in-one 240SX 2JZ swap. Intercooler kit comes with everything you need. You have a huge range of turbochargers to choose from. I went with the Borg Warner S366. You really have to pick and choose depending on your application, so I'm not going to steer you in any one direction, just tell you what I went with. For the wastegate, I went with a 46mm precision turbo style. There are also plenty of ones that you could go with for this. This is just the one that I chose. Now for your manifold, downpipe, your dump tube, your exhaust, CX Racing makes pretty much an all-in-one kit for this. I've used it on mine. It sounds really good. It is really high quality. I've had really no trouble with it and would recommend that. And CX Racing also makes the catback exhaust that hooks right up to this system, so that's what I went with as well. Super high quality, like I said before. You're gonna need shorter exhaust studs to run that turbo manifold from CX Racing because it's made of some pretty thick metal. These are from PHR, but you can pick them up from really anywhere. The link is gonna be in the description below. Now for anything over about 500 wheel horsepower, the 2JZ's stock coil packs aren't really gonna work. They're gonna start breaking up at anything over 500 horsepower. To combat this, PRP makes an R35 GTR Smart coil conversion for the 2J. I've used these. They're a bit pricey, but you just pop them in, their bracket, and the coils fit really, really nice, and you should have no problems. This is just overkill for the setup. Now, if you're gonna make anything over 550 wheel horsepower, you're gonna want some upgraded head studs. The stock head studs are strong, but not strong enough to prevent lifting at really high horsepower. So really anything over 550, you're gonna get some head lift. ARP makes head studs that really no one has problems with. They're about 80, 90 bucks, so I went with those. Now for wiring, you have a ton of options. You can do it yourself, or you can have another company do it. And that's what I did because I know if I did it, I would mess up. So Wiring Specialties, they have a pro harness for this specific application. They've been really good. They called me about, I don't know, 4 or 5 times while they were making my harness to ask me specific questions for my application, which was really, really awesome. So I would highly recommend them. Something that'll make your life a whole lot easier is using a standalone ECU. Here's the Haltech Elite 2000, which is what I went with. You can use the stock ECU, except that's notably harder to make higher horsepower with and make it reliably, I should say, as well. So a standalone ECU will make your life a lot easier. Plenty of companies make drive shafts for a 2JZ and a 240SX, and you can also get them custom made. It's really your preference. This is the Freed Engineering drive shaft. I did have a little bit of trouble with them because they sent me the wrong size, but they were quick to take it back and fix it and send it back to me. So can't really say much against them because they were so good about it, but I went with Freed Engineering for the drive shaft. The stock front sway bar is going to hit the oil pan on the 2JZ, so you need to get this, which allows the oil pan to clear just fine. Something that 99% of people do when performing this swap is relocate the battery to the trunk. You really can't keep it in the engine bay because there's not a whole lot of room. You can use a battery relocation kit for this, which is what I did. They're pretty standard and universal kits, but you can also make up your own bracket kit and buy the wiring all by yourself, so it's really your preference. Most kits also come with an inline fuse, but if it doesn't, you're going to need to pick one of those up too for your battery. Another thing that'll come in handy is a power distribution block. This is a really clean way to get power to whatever needs power after you do a battery relocation. Now for the clutch. You can choose from a ton of options, just like the turbocharger for this. I went with the Driftmotion Stage 3.5 clutch for the R154. Just make sure that it's for the R154 when you get your clutch. You're also going to need a flywheel. This is also from Driftmotion for the R154 to the 2JZ. It's really high quality. All the stuff from Driftmotion is really high quality, so I would recommend that as well. It's also recommended that with the new flywheel, you get some ARP flywheel bolts. This is not a necessity, but it adds a little bit of insurance so that the flywheel bolts that came with the engine don't, snap off or become loose and go through your leg or your transmission tunnel or anything like that. So would highly recommend you spend the $32 and pick up a set of these. Another thing you should probably pick up is a new pilot bearing for your crankshaft. This is also off of Driftmotion for like $10. This is a clutch release hub kit also from Driftmotion for the R154. It works with their clutch kit. A little bit difficult to install, I must say, but you're going to get that with any clutch release hub kit. So yeah, you're going to need one of these as well. If you don't have it already, you're also going to need some high temperature grease for when you're installing your pressure plate and your clutch with the transmission and all that. So pick some of that up if you don't have some. Now on to getting some of your hoses. This is the Chase Bays clutch line kit, which is something that you're going to need, as well as the Chase Bays fuel line kit. Now you can buy all of these lines separately and just make them and fabricate them yourself, but Chase Bays already has all of the connectors on there that you need custom to whatever application you put in. Like on the website, you can see there, if you have a radium fuel rail, they make the connectors fit up to a radium fuel rail. So that was really nice. It's really plug and play. So that's awesome. A fuel pressure regulator, or FPR, is also extremely essential. This is a 3-port FPR from Aeromotive. They're pretty much one of the best in the business for fuel pressure regulators. So go with them, if not another very reputable company, because you don't want this to be cheap. If it breaks on you, you've got some huge problems. Now you can stick with the stock fuel rail, although I wouldn't recommend it if you want to go over about 350 to 400 horsepower. I went with a radium side feed fuel rail. It looks really slick, not much else to say about that. It performs really well from what I've seen so far. So yeah, there you go. Bigger injectors are a must. ID is one of the most well-known injector companies out there. I went with the 1050 X class injectors, which is a 1050cc injector. That's kind of overkill for 500 to 600 horsepower on just pump gas, but you definitely have room to move up if you want to go for higher horsepower with these. Now, how are we going to control the boost? You can get a boost control solenoid or a manual boost controller. I went with the boost control solenoid because it hooks right up to the Haltech Elite 2000 standalone ECU, but you can just as easily go with a manual boost controller, which is pictured here. It's definitely a far cheaper option if that's what you want to go with, but it's really up to your preference. You're also going to need to get oil to and from your turbo. Freed Engineering makes a really high quality kit for this. Another thing you're gonna need is an oil sandwich plate, either for your sensors or your oil cooler, which I would recommend you get, which is later in the video here. They're really cheap and make it easy for you to get any oil sensors, pressure, temperature, what have you, into your system. This is a coolant overflow tank. I got one specifically for the 240SX. There are a ton of options for this, so go with whatever you think looks best. So this is a power steering pump kit from Chase Bays for the 240SX to 2JZ. It really just pops right in. I have no complaints with it, so would highly recommend this as well. Vacuum hoses are a must when you're performing a swap like this, so get a bunch of different sizes. You'll thank me later. Relays are essential for this swap as well. First, you're gonna need them for your radiator fans if you're running E-fans, and also it's highly recommended that you hardwire your fuel pump so that it gets a constant voltage while the car is running regardless of what happens. Now in the description, I put the relay I use for my radiator fans, but the one that you get for your fuel pump, if you're gonna do that, is really quite similar. Something that often gets overlooked is the fippage that you can get from Toyota. This is the Rtv Sealant. It's like Rtv, but it's a little bit higher quality and it's made for Toyota. So when you're doing your shifter extension, if you need to do that with your R154, you're gonna need some of this. Something that'll add a little bit of safety and insurance to your build is the DEI fire safety wraps. You can put these over just about any line in your engine bay if it's close to a heat source, and it'll protect it from catching on fire, which is really important. An oil catch can is also highly recommended, but not totally essential, but it will make sure that you don't build up a ton of crankcase pressure, because that is really bad and then you get blow by and stuff. So you can get really cheap catch cans. That's what I did. I got like a $20 one, and it'll work just fine. CX Racing makes a throttle cable bracket that works with the stock 240SX throttle cable. So if you wanted to use the stock throttle cable that came in the car, you can just buy this $50 bracket, pop it on your intake manifold, and you can use the throttle cable that's in the car, and it works just fine. Don't forget your toggle switches, guys. You're gonna need to control at least one thing on your car when you're doing this swap, or if you're doing this swap, I should say. Whether that be your radiator fans, your fuel pump, your anti-lag, your high-low boost settings, you're gonna need at least one toggle switch. So get some cool ones, get some nice ones of those. Getting into the sensors and gauges a little bit, you're going to need, if anything, a wideband gauge. Your air-fuel ratio is extremely important and you should know what it is. So AEM makes a nice little, you've probably seen it before, they make a nice little kit. And you're also gonna want some other gauges. There are about 4 other gauges that are essential: oil pressure, oil temperature, boost, and coolant temperature. So if you're gonna get 4 other gauges, those are the ones that are the most important. I got mine from Pro Sport, which are the ones that are pictured here. I think they look really nice, but you can go with any gauges you want. Now, in terms of sensors, your ECU also needs to know what's going on. So this is a 7-bar oil or fuel pressure sensor, and I got 2 of them, one for my fuel rail and one for my oil pressure. So the ECU knows what the fuel pressure and the oil pressure are at all times. This is a Haltech IAT sensor or an intake air temperature sensor, which you will need if you're not using the MAF sensor that comes with the 2JZ. This is a Haltech MAP sensor. It detects changes in pressure. You hook it up to your intake manifold, and when you couple this with the IAT sensor, which was in the picture before, it allows you to do volumetric efficiency tuning, which is higher quality tuning when you want to go and get your car tuned and get it on the road. The 2JZ GTE VVTi comes with a drive-by-wire system, and that is not something that most people are going to be using. So Driftmotion makes a drive-by-wire delete kit. It's really cheap and it's really simple, and it turns your throttle body into a cable-driven throttle body instead of a drive-by-wire. Another thing that's not necessary but will make your life easier is the Driftmotion Universal Idle Air Speed Control Valve. You hook this part up to your intake manifold and it controls the idle of your car. So if you're running AC, or you still want to run and retain AC on your car, this is going to be essential, because you can't really change the idle if you're using just a mechanical idle speed control. So yeah, something that you should probably look into. Finally, on the list, an oil cooler. This is not essential, but highly recommended. You can get a kit from Driftmotion that has everything you need. Yeah, make sure you keep that oil cool, guys. Super important. Now that's the end of the parts list that I have for you. There's a ton of other stuff you're obviously going to need. Didn't include anything to refresh the engine, didn't include any fluids, it didn't include any tools. As long as you have a decent sized toolbox, nothing crazy, you don't need any really crazy tools, and you have an engine hoist and preferably an engine stand, you're going to be good to go. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I will get back to you. But until then, peace, and I'll see you in the next one.